Palestinian Authority spokesman, Mr. Nabil Abu Rudaineh. Thank you for joining me.
You are most welcome.
Let's start with internal Palestinian politics. Why did President Mahmoud Abbas announce the elections or call for Palestinian elections now?
We tried to go to elections several times, but the problem is that Hamas was not ready for the last 10 years. There were many obstacles, some of them from Israel, preventing us to do something in Jerusalem, and sometimes from Hamas in Gaza. And our policy was, we want a united country. We cannot run for elections in the West Bank alone without Jerusalem and without Gaza. And the Palestinian slogan has always been, we will never permit any elections to happen alone in the West Bank or Gaza without Jerusalem. There is an environment now of democracy in the whole world, and we keep telling everybody that we should go back to elections. Who wins should run the country.
Hamas in principle has agreed to take part in these elections, but have you heard anything from them until this point?
Unfortunately, no. They are spreading positive answers, but we sent them a letter. We asked for a written reply. They didn't reply till now. And we know they are not ready because they are not independent like Fatah organization. They are connected to the Muslim Brotherhoods. They are connected, some of them are connected to Iran. Some of them are connected to foreign regional powers. It's not in our hands, you know. They are not ready.
What if Israel does not allow the Palestinian Authority and Palestinians living in East Jerusalem to take part in these elections? Will you still go ahead with the elections?
Without Jerusalem, there won't be elections. And we succeeded to run for elections in Jerusalem during the last 20 years, if you remember. So if Hamas, like Israel, are not happy with our elections, we have a problem. But instead of that, we are going to keep pushing for elections, for free elections. We are a democratic people, and we are ready for it since 10 years.
Was President Abbas pressured to make this announcement?
This is not true at all. I can assure you, and you can go back to the statements of Hamas. They said there won't be ever early elections. And this is, you know, this is part of their mentality. They think elections, it's one shot. If you succeed, you shouldn't go back to elections again. They did it several places, and this is their ideology and their kind of thinking.
There has been a number of accusations against the Palestinian Authority that it's cracking down on Palestinian journalists, on freedom of expressions. What do you say to that?
First of all, I can assure you that 95% of these news are fake news. Secondly, we have a law here, and everybody can go to the courts. And in spite of that, I can assure you, as a Deputy Prime Minister, this is part of my job. In my capacity, I have never received any complaint for anybody. The third issue, we have a problem, as I would show you something now in these papers, that for the last 20 years, there had been several stations working without permission. The law says there should be a security clearance, there should be a license from this office, from the Information Ministry. Then you can proceed if you pay the money of the registration. So far, we found out that 70% of them are not registered here in the West Bank. They are working freely. They didn't have any permission, and in spite of that, we didn't arrest anybody. We didn't close any station. All what we said in a written letter to all of these stations and websites to go back to the law and work accordingly, and we give them 3 to 6 months in order to solve this issue. According to the law, you have the right for free speech, free movement, but there should be security limits. According to the law, basically there are no restrictions. But if the security branches have some information, they have the right to do their job.
following President Trump's announcement regarding Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and also moving the embassy, U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the Palestinian Authority and President Mahmoud Abbas boycotted the U.S. administration. Is there any communication right now between Palestinian officials and U.S. officials?
Since the announcement of President Trump concerning Jerusalem, he said Jerusalem is off the table. We said Trump and the United States off the table as well. Jerusalem is part of the occupied country since 1967. We went to Madrid conference. We went to the White House 50, 60 times with President Clinton, with George Bush. We went with Obama and even with Trump himself. And I can tell you two things. Unless this issue is solved, the Palestinian issue is solved, continuous, endless wars in the Middle East. Second issue, millions of immigrants pouring to Europe and to the West.
President Donald Trump's Mideast team, which consists of his son-in-law Jared Kushner, his U.S. ambassador to Israel David Friedman, and Jason Greenblatt, which is now resigned, have been his main team here in the Middle East, which have been meeting with Israeli officials as well as Palestinian officials. Compare to us this team versus previous administrations' teams, and what's your take on them?
The people around Trump is convincing him of fake facts and ruining the American policy in the Middle East and deceiving him as well. When we met him 3 years ago in the White House, he ordered his team to go to the West Bank and Israel to start next Monday to start negotiating. And our president told him, if you go outside and say, I will work according to the two-state solution. And suddenly his group said, no, Mr. President, you are going to destroy everything. So he was taken aback. And then somebody told him that if you want to solve this issue, let's take Jerusalem off the table. That was
who's this somebody?
The gang of three around him, his ambassador here, and Kushner and Greenblatt. This team is complete failure. This team ruined the credibility of the policy of the United States, because this administration proved that they are completely biased. They don't know the Middle East. We know the Middle East much better than them. We told them this is not a solution. This means endless wars.
Mr. Abu Rudaineh, what happened to the so-called deal of the century?
It was born dead. It was born dead because they didn't listen to our president and to our leadership. The Arabs and the Muslims and the Christians are for two-state solution based on the international law.
Does President Mahmoud Abbas feel isolated right now?
We are not isolated. They are isolated. The Americans are in chaos. Israel is divided. They cannot form a government. We have a lot of enemies, and in spite of that, nothing will happen without our acceptance, the acceptance of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership.
Recently, head of the PA General Intelligence Services, Majid Faraj, met in Washington with top U.S. security from intelligence apparatus, CIA, and others. If the Palestinian Authority is boycotting the U.S. administration, why is he meeting with them?
This relationship had been always good with all these branches, including the CIA. They have better understanding. They understand very well what's going on, but nobody is listening to them at the White House. But as I told you, we are committed to peace. That means that we are ready to fight against terror everywhere. Security relationship will never stop. It's part of our protecting ourselves first and protecting the ideas which we believe in. Our president said that we are not going to accept the Americans to sit alone on the table with us, with the Israelis. We should go back to the quartet. We should have what they did, the Americans with Iran, 5+1. Step number one should be, there should be a declaration. The basis of these negotiations is a two-state solution based on the land occupied in 1967 with East Jerusalem included.